As I was saying, you're going to know as much as people in Israel know from a modern Zionist perspective. And I really do honestly think that if the people in Israel knew the kinds of things that you know here, they wouldn't have made such a mess of the recent Lebanon war. I mean, that showed the most incredible lack of sophistication, insight, ideology. Just everything was lacking on an intellectual level. In fact, I said to my kids, again, forgive me for bringing family things, that if you don't know who these people are yet too much, so you'll learn. But if Theodore Herzl, who we will study, who is considered to be the father of Zionism, I'm not sure he actually is. I think it started long before him. But he put it in a political perspective. But he died suddenly. He died prematurely. Either he had a weak heart, or in his concern and desperation after the Dreyfus affair. You say, what's Eisenman talking about? What's the Dreyfus affair? Well, that's what you're going to learn about. These are the things that the modern Jewish history reader and other things will make clear. Because it'll have it has all of Emile Zola's J'accuse in that book. And we'll read Emile Zola's J'accuse. Say, what's J'accuse? I accuse. When Emile Zola, the famous French novelist, accused the whole French establishment of corruption, intellectual dishonesty, and a cover-up. And of course, a lot of you may know that Dreyfus went to Devil's Island and so on and so forth with demob, I don't know how you would call it, court-martial, demob from the army. He was an officer in the French army, one of the only Jewish officers, and publicly dishonored, and his epaulets were torn off and thrown on the ground, and his buttons were pulled off his uniform and so on, because he was supposed to be a German spy, which he wasn't. Herzl was the journalist from one of the very well-known Austrian newspapers covering this event, not only the trial, but the event of his public, I don't know what you call it, demobbing or humiliation or whatever you call it. And he was so upset by what he saw and what the cries that he heard from the crowd that he became obsessed with founding a Jewish state. That he concluded from that the Jews had to have a state in order to survive. But he was so obsessed with the idea, this is around 1900 or so, 1890s, late 1890s, early 1900s, that he worked so hard that he just died suddenly about 5 years later of I guess he had a heart attack or something like that. But he saw things so clearly that I said to my family members often that if he had lived, we wouldn't be seeing these ridiculous things we're seeing now as far as the Jewish situation, because he had such a clear view of what was necessary and what had to be. And these people today don't have any clear view at all. They're just like bumbling along and lost. So it's sort of like Lincoln. America went through a terrible period after the Civil War, which could have largely been avoided if you had enlightened leadership of the kind of a Lincoln. But the most dastardly, horrendous thing that really happened to this country, and I think people are aware of the tragedy, is that he was shot 1 week after the war ended. And it totally threw into chaos all of what the effects of that war were, and it took 100 years for the country to even get on the right get on the right track vis-a-vis what that was all about. So, I mean, one great man, when he's removed, can cause tremendous havoc far beyond what people imagined at the time. So, Herzl was that kind of person where the Jewish people were concerned. I don't mean to wax poetic or miserable here, whichever you see it, but again, not to depress you or anything. I just read in the newspaper the other day that Herzl was brought back to Israel after the birth of the state and buried in one of the famous cemeteries there. And he, I don't know about his wife. I don't know the whole story about what happened with his wife, but I didn't know what happened to his children. His daughter apparently was in poverty or penury in Belgium on the eve of the Second World War, and the so-called Zionist movement wouldn't give her any money to help her out, and she died, I forget, in very bad circumstances. And then his son, when he heard this, he converted to Christianity, but it wasn't clear that he didn't convert back again. In any case, he killed himself the next day when he heard what happened to his sister. And Herzl's other daughter died in the Holocaust. So, there are some really tragic things that underlie these things when you, the reason I read that is they're trying to bring the bodies back because in Herzl's will, he wanted his children buried near or beside him in the Holy Land. And the rabbis were against it because of the suicide and the conversion. But I think they were surreptitiously trying to sneak them back in and into the graveyard or whatever. So it's a long, big story, but the point was, I'm not laughing at it. It was on my mind, but I saw the tragedy of that. And it's a very tragic moment for everyone. I'm not speaking about the Palestinians at the moment or the Lebanese or whatever. This is not, of course, about their history. Unfortunately, I can't deal with that. I do Islamic courses and things, but the Jews get short enough shrift as far as their situation goes. So we'll focus on them and their outlook, and we'll have to skip what the morality or immorality of things may be according to the point of view of different observers. I'll leave you to worry about the morality and that sort of thing, but I have to stick to the Jewish issue, and I can't, I'm not going to get into the Palestinian issue or anything like that, except